Welcome in. Latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there's our great friend, Stephen Lassan, senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Stephen, how are you?
Mike, 25 days until college football starts. Fall practice is starting up. Players are reporting to camps. We've got coaches, some other conferences yelling about the SEC strength of schedule. So it is a glorious time in the sport when the kickoff is right around the corner, isn't it?
It is. And but maybe our favorite thing, Stephen, Shane, and I were joking about it yesterday, but we really know it's right around the corner when all these cousins are piling in by literally the dozens here before we even hit the play button. So we appreciate, so many Tony's in here, Benny's in here, Robert's in here, Todd, Cameron, Emily, Slim, G's, Louise, Nick, on and on and on. Kyle, we see you in here. So all these cousins, they know it's football time. So we're very, very grateful that you've all chosen to hang out with us. And we're also grateful, Stephen, for our friends over at MyBookie, our presenting sponsor, once again, this season. So head on over to mybookie.ag if you're looking to wager on the action this football season. Fade cousin Shane, fade me. Listen to Stephen. He's the only one of us that's educated. But go on over to mybookie.ag. That's the website. Promo code SEC. It's going to be right there on the bottom of the screen all season long to make it easy for you guys. Promo code SEC, 100% deposit match over at MyBookie. So, Stephen, this is the best time of year. Everybody's undefeated. Nobody's lost a game. Well, Florida may not be undefeated anymore. We'll get to that in just a second. But shout out JR. JR's done it again, Stephen. He's gifted a membership. The man just, no matter what time of year, he's in here.
Legend, cousin JR has done it again.
Appreciate you, JR. And I'm trying to see who he gifted. Uh-oh. This show's getting too popular. We got to calm down here, people. Sir Douglas of York. Sir Douglas, welcome to the family. Thanks to JR. And we also had he's really our second favorite, Stephen.
Always
Stephen
showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Stephen up. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen gifted a membership to I think Stephen Up. Did Stephen Up beat you to it, JR? No, he didn't. Okay. Greasy 88. That's my nickname here. Greasy 80. Greasy, welcome to the family, courtesy of Stephen Up. But hey, we got a lot to get into here, Stephen. So I don't even know where to begin. But how about for old Liquid down there? I see him. Let's start with DJ Lagway. Anybody that missed it, we did a quick little emergency podcast. DJ Lagway spotted in a boot down in Gainesville. He's injured. Doesn't sound serious by any means, but what was your initial thoughts, Stephen, when you heard DJ Lagway banged up down in Gainesville?
Mike, is it too early to fire up the panic meter?
Panic meter smashed over here, Stephen.
Yeah, it's like one of those, it's like a scale of 1 to 10. It has shot off of the thermometer. It's broken. We've got glass everywhere. It doesn't sound bad, but I am a little bit worried. Maybe a little bit is underselling it. I think the cumulative effect of these injuries, missing time in the spring, he's a first-time full starter. I think having a full off season of workouts could be pretty valuable. I mean, you do have some pieces at receiver and, you're trying to break in. So I'm a little bit worried about the kind of cumulative effect here. My biggest worry, though, is will any of these injuries hang on into the season? And whether that's ones in the spring or whether that's these now. And you also think about how valuable he just is to Florida. Like, he is Florida's season. Certainly, we talk about their defense being better, but to me, everything about Florida's playoff hopes starts if DJ Lagway is healthy. This team can get to 9-3, 10-2, and be in the playoff hunt. So I'm worried. Panic meter past 10 at this point. Certainly hope that it's a temporary thing, and we hear a week from now DJ Lagway is firing missiles in fall practice with no concerns.
Right, and certainly we're all hoping for that. But the question has to be asked, Stephen. Again, they say this is not the shoulder, this is not the other injuries he's had. He got banged up in his action last year against Georgia. We all remember that, and he came right back. I mean, he's a rare athlete, so I'm not questioning his athleticism by any means. But if this truly is an additional injury, and he's getting hurt, and they haven't even opened camp, I mean, isn't it fair to say or question? That's probably the better way to put it. Isn't it fair to question just his ability to remain healthy get in a 12-game season where he's going to start every game, and we're desperately going to count on him in about 10 of those games if Florida has a chance to win?
It's a good question. I think it's fair to question it. I mean, given the fact that he's been in college for one season, he's been banged up during the season, he's been banged up after the season, and now he's banged up again going into the fall. It is hard because injuries are kind of random too. Some players just seem to be more vulnerable than others. So I think only knowing what we know right now, was given his short history at Florida and the injuries, I think there has to be a major concern, which again, Mike, you and I talked about this in the spring. Harrison Bailey is the backup for Florida. He could start against Long Island and they could win that game. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is, South Florida could threaten Florida. Not too worried. I think their offense at South Florida is going to be good this year. But LSU, Miami, Texas A&M, that stretch, and then you still have to play Georgia. You've got to have Lagway 100% healthy. But if he's not, Harrison Bailey probably is not going to keep this offense on track enough to win those games. Now, maybe the cumulative effect of having a good defense, offensive line, run game, but the drop off and backup play here. Harrison Bailey's been around for a while, but Lagway to Harrison Bailey is a steep drop off and would be a major issue for me for Florida this year. Is just, can you keep DJ Lagway healthy against this very kind of good slate of defenses that you're going to play in 2025?
And Liquid is just wanting us to move on. So let's move on, Stephen. We'll monitor the DJ Lagway. Again, camp starts Wednesday for Florida, so we'll be all over that. Shout out Liquid. Stephen, he gifted 5 memberships. John Westfall, Hank, Man with the Plan, Carolina Cooter. I'm just reading the name, folks. I'm not making these up. Kevin James, you've all been gifted thanks to the legend, Liquid Flames, a.k.a. Dustin, big Florida fan, who does not want us to talk about DJ anymore, which I understand. And shout out TriStar, member for 4 months. As someone who represents tradition, why can't we have a regionalism anymore? And is Florida overhyped? Bring Georgia Tech back to the SEC. Well, that's a perfect segue, Stephen, because I did want to ask you quickly. We don't have to spend a ton of time because I'm already sensing some fatigue but everybody loves to talk expansion. TriStar is bringing back Georgia Tech, one of the original members of the SEC. Thoughts on Georgia Tech as a candidate there, Stephen, and thoughts on the rumors, the rumbling, speculation, whatever you want to call it, that North Carolina may be eyeing a move to the SEC. What's your thoughts on all that?
So do we want to bring back Tulane and Sewanee to the SEC and get them all, get the band back together, get the history of the SEC? In all seriousness, I actually think Georgia Tech is probably a better expansion candidate for the Big Ten as they try to expand south eventually. As far as North Carolina goes, this might be a bold prediction. I think North Carolina will eventually be in the SEC. And that's not any inside information. I just think it's like reading the tea leaves here. The ACC had a kind of, they just went through a kind of a lawsuit period where Florida State and Clemson sued the ACC to understand all of the legal ramifications and buyout money. Long way of saying they figured it out. And in 2030, that buyout basically drops to like $75 million. It's very manageable for all the top programs in the ACC. And when you think about where this could go in college football, like the first round of realignment with Missouri and Texas A&M into the conference was about markets. Like it was about expansion to big time states and populations. The last round was brands. It was Texas and Oklahoma. Big Ten added USC and Oregon and UCLA, Washington. So I don't know exactly what the next one will be. But I think just looking at a map, it's kind of obvious, like there's not an SEC team in North Carolina. There's not a SEC team in Virginia. I think there could be some strategy of like doubling down as far as adding the best brands. Like Clemson and Florida State would be unbelievable additions to the conference. I'm sorry, Mike. I know you don't want Florida State in the league. But, you're talking about what could the future of college football look like? And could the SEC and Big Ten just do their own things? And if that's the case, you want to go gobble up the big brands. So I know I'm kind of like all over the map here, Mike, on this, but I do think if you just look at all the things that North Carolina brings, like the academics, the potential on the gridiron, brands, state, a growing state in population, they make a ton of sense for the SEC. And also, if you're maybe a team in the middle of the conference, isn't North Carolina more palatable to add than Clemson and Florida State, and adding teams that could maybe win the national championship, and you're fighting North Carolina to go to like the Duke's Mayo Bowl or something? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fully on board with North Carolina if they want to come. I just think that I think it makes too much sense not to happen. So again, we'll see. I do think they're going to be here, so I'm already kind of greasing the wheels, so to speak. I know some people are totally against expansion, and that's fine because honestly, I'm right there with them. But I already know that it's likely to happen, so I'm essentially getting prepared for it.
Yeah, Mike, the other thing too is, if the SEC doesn't expand to 9 conference games and you get to 18 or 20 teams, I mean, you're talking about a pretty like extended conference where you're not playing each other very often. Now, could you go to pods? Could you go to like some different scheduling? There's probably some things in there that make a lot of sense, but in the bigger picture, like there could be like a strategic thing here too. If you're the SECs, like how much do you want the Big Ten to come south? You don't want them to start, kind of encroaching on your territory. If they have Georgia Tech and Miami, that's a lot different than having Florida State, Clemson, and having a presence in North Carolina. So I'm not surprised at all by that reporting. I think North Carolina makes a ton of sense for the SEC sometime in the future.
And shout out Alex Wood. He gave us $5, Stephen. Hell no to Clemson in the SEC. I'm right there with you, Alex. They can go to hell. They lose to LSU for all I care. You know what?
Mike, what would it take for you to get on board with Florida State coming to the SEC?
I might abandon this show. I might expand to a different conference if that happens.
That ACC podcast coming soon. I think Cousin Shane just entered the transfer portal too, by the way. So
now let me ask you one final thing, and then we can move on because we got a lot to hit on here. And I know this is not going to be popular, probably with any of the cousins, particularly one fan base, Stephen. But one name I'm not hearing mentioned that there has been some speculation previously. Would Kansas make any sense? If you're getting North Carolina, you're getting Kansas. Again, I'm not saying that should be a prime target by any means, but we already know, that's a basketball school. That would be the SEC is put a renewed emphasis on basketball. If they got North Carolina, if they got Kansas in basketball, my word, what a conference this would be for basketball. And again, is it a football power? Certainly not, but I've heard some rumblings, Stephen. You tell me if I'm wrong, or if you've heard different. But while fans, we may look at it like Clemson's got a good football program, Florida State's got a good football program. We want the best football. It's not necessarily that's not the methodology. Some of these programs want the little ones that they could beat up in football. So I mean, Kansas fits that category as well.
If you're making the argument for Kansas, I think you could point to like they have invested in football more recently. They just renovated their stadium, pretty significant overhaul. They've been better at football recently too. Also, they bring the other things that you mentioned, basketball, sort of a new kind of newish market. Also, kind of adding to your Western wing with Oklahoma, Missouri. I could see it, and I think it also would get at the idea that in the future there's these super conferences and how they act. Like everybody interacts right now on the FBS level, but is there a separate thing where the SEC is doing its own thing, the Big Ten's doing its own thing, and it's sort of like it's its own league conference on its own without some of the other stuff right now? And so I don't know what that looks like, but in a case like that, if you're trying to build the most well-rounded conference, like Kansas would definitely make sense. And also I would tell you, every time you talk about North Carolina to the SEC, I guarantee you there is going to be an NC State fan who cites how many times they've beaten North Carolina in the X amount of years. It never fails because, to your point, it doesn't necessarily matter what happens on the field. I mean, if that happens, Boise State would be one of the best additions to any conference out there. There's a lot more variables that go into it than just wins and losses. They matter, but they're not everything in realignment. It's a lot of TV executives, everything else that goes involved. It's a very complicated puzzle that is not just dependent on W's and L's.
Well, I can tell the Cousins hate it. So Kansas, you've been outvoted. Sorry. And shout out T. Williams just became a member. T, welcome to the family. All right, before we get in, we got a lot to hit on here, Steve. We're going to hit on all 16 SEC teams, fall camp preview, biggest questions, players to watch. Stephen and I have done this for every single team. But real quick, Stephen, do you have a bold prediction this week?
I do.
All right, hold on. Let me play this here. All right, Stephen. So what is your bold prediction this week in the SEC?
I know this is going to make you extremely happy, Mike. So last year, LSU finished like 13th in the SEC. And this is, I tried to find like a metric that everybody could go to. So ESPN's like FPI, you can sort the defensive rankings by conference. LSU was 13th in the conference last year in defensive rating. So I'm going to go a little bit bold here. I think LSU finishes inside the top 7 of the SEC in this defensive category, or perhaps maybe they are one of the most improved defenses if you want to put them in the top 7 of yards per play or scoring defense. I'm buying this LSU defense, so I'm going to go ahead and make a bold prediction that they finish top 7, top 8, whatever it is, whatever metric you want to put. I think they will be significantly improved this year.
Wow, so you're buying into clearly year 2 Blake Baker, his defense. Again, they took some big strides last season, but then it kind of all crumbled. They haven't learned how to defend a rushing quarterback, apparently. So your confidence level that they can defend the rushing quarterback is there, I guess.
It is. I mean, they've had all offseason to figure this out. They better not get surprised, right? I love the portal additions. Also, I think DJ Pickett at corner. The whole depth chart just looks better, and also, I keep thinking about Harold Perkins, and I keep coming back to, you have this chess piece that you've got to figure out where is the strengths? Like, is it just being a third down guy who can just get to the quarterback? Do you use him more versatile? However it is, after last year and the pressure that's on the staff, they better figure it out. So I'm kind of just banking on like pressure, talent, Blake Baker in year 2, kind of continuing to get this defense higher up on the stat sheet this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Stephen, are you ready to go on a deep dive here? All 16 SEC teams?
Let's do it, Mike. I'm excited to actually see players on the field this week, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, no doubt, except for apparently DJ Lagway. But again, throw us a donation, not required by any means. And if you do, we'll be sure to throw your team to the top of the list. And to honor the legend JR, he's a big Georgia fan, Stephen. So let's do Georgia first. Throw up her schedule real quick. What is, again, Stephen, I haven't seen Stephen's list. He hasn't seen mine. So hopefully we're a little bit different here. But what, for you, Stephen, is the biggest question you have for the Georgia Bulldogs, or, the biggest thing that you want to see them solve during fall camp?
This one is tricky because I have a player to watch for Georgia, and that kind of maybe takes apart the big storyline, Mike. But I think the main storyline that I'm watching for at Georgia is going to be the line of scrimmage. 4 new starters on the offensive line. They're very talented. Your bold prediction about the run game for Georgia, I'm buying that too. But I want to know early in fall camp, early in the season, they get Marshall and Austin Peay. 2 chances to build confidence before you play Tennessee and Alabama. 2 pretty good defenses. So I want to know in the fall on the offensive line, do they leave feeling good about a top 5? Do they have that group solidified? What's kind of the buzz? And then over on defense too, they were 8th in the SEC last year against the run. I think this is a group that is not lacking for talent. I think they can be much better in 2025. So I'm looking at like Elo Madozi, the Army transfer off the edge. You're also looking at guys like Jordan Hall, Elijah Griffin, Christian Miller. Can all of those guys elevate their game? So just kind of getting back to the basics almost for Georgia at the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you're turning into Shane. You're hitting on everything. So,
Yeah.
of course, you're going to hit on what I hit on if you're going to talk 20 things. But yeah, I went offensive line because of what I said about Georgia establishing that run, 15th in the SEC in rushing. That's never thought I'd see that under a Kirby Smart team. We've got to reestablish that. I know a lot of that had to do with Carson Beck and the confidence in his arm and the receivers we had. But now I think it's time to reestablish that running game. Mike Bobo, say what you want about him, but everywhere he goes, until last year, I guess, he's been very solid in manufacturing a running game. And with Gunnar Stockton as your starting quarterback, I'm not questioning him necessarily with this comment, but I do think we're going to rely a lot more on the ground game, and he is much more of a running threat than old Carson Beck. So all that put together, Nate Frazier, I think, could be one of the biggest breakout players. He's already broken out, I guess you could say, because he was successful last year. But year 2 jump for him, maybe he leads the SEC in rushing. That wouldn't stun me. I don't think that's going to happen, but it certainly wouldn't stun me. So give me the offensive line. We got to get that resolved. They got all the talent in the world. Trying to figure out where these pieces go together. I think that is the biggest concern, question mark, whatever you want to say for Georgia, because quite frankly, you need a solid offensive line too with a first-time starting quarterback. I mean, it just kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I mentioned the early season schedule with Tennessee and Alabama, and I think you could ask Gunnar Stockton to win you those games if you're Georgia. But I think it's more likely that you probably would like to ease your young quarterback into the season. Now, he did play Notre Dame and he played Texas at the end of last year. Those were two of the best defenses in college football. So he's battle tested. I think it's a matter of trying to, what's his learning curve here? And if you can get that ground game going, you provide him good protection, give him some easy throws, you're building his confidence up in those first 2 weeks. Then you go on the road to play a good Tennessee defensive line. Same thing for Alabama. Then by then, 4 games into the season, you've played 2 top, 25 teams in the SEC. He will be even more battle tested. So, it's kind of, again, like going back to the basics. If you're Georgia, being able to run the ball, put your quarterback in manageable situations, and then once he gets comfortable, giving him that protection to take some shots downfield to like a Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas, Colby Young. They've got some good weapons on the outside, but it all starts up front and having a better year up there.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, a big time player to watch, Stephen. I remember Athlon took all the crap in the world for their anonymous comments that Stephen did not make up about the linebackers. But would it surprise you, Stephen, that friend of the show, Cole Kublik, I think he's one of the more knowledgeable, well, quite frankly, the most knowledgeable when it comes to college football analyzing and things of that nature. I don't think it was his most recent show, but a show or two ago, he said he threw out this name as a candidate for SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and it wasn't even on my radar till Cole said it. Elo Mendoza, a guy you referenced, the transfer from Army, coming off the edge there. So that's my player to watch. I want to see, taking that step up from Army to the SEC. He's going to have all the talent in the world around him, so it'll make his job getting to the quarterback a little bit easier. But what's your reaction to that, Cole, putting that on the young man? And could you see a scenario? Again, he didn't say this guy is player of the year or anything like that, but thoughts on hearing that and just the belief that Cole has that Elo Mendoza, hope I'm saying that right, could be a huge impact for Georgia.
I think he will have an impact simply because I don't think, and this is like super basic, I don't think Georgia brings anybody to sit on the bench. Like if they brought you in from the portal, especially in the spring, they saw something in you. And I think I trust Kirby and the staff to get the most out of his talent. It is a big jump going from Army to the SEC, but I also think that they're not relying on him to be like an every down guy. Like if you're just getting 10 to 15 snaps and he's disruptive as heck, I think that's a win. So I defensive player of the year in the SEC seems pretty bold to me. But I won't doubt Cole Kublik at all. He's he's probably my favorite analyst out there. So I'll defer to him on that. It's a little bold for me, though.
Okay. Well, you know what's not bold, Stephen, is oh wait, I forgot. We've got a new sponsor to the show. Let's run this down real quick, Stephen. I don't know if you're familiar with this brand, but they sent us over some shirts. I'm loving it. Shout out Poncho Outdoors. Stephen. Poncho Outdoors, promo code SEC, or just type in Poncho Outdoors /SEC to get $10 off your order at Poncho Outdoors. Shane's got some stuff over there. I know he's loving it. He's got a bunch of T-shirts from them, but they make the ultimate performance shirts. Stephen, they have different styles for every shirt. The originals, westerns, denims, ultralight. This is like hunting gear, casual gear, some really good stuff. And they even got stuff, they have an orange shirt, Stephen, that Shane and I both order. It's called the Nealon. So, I mean, this is a very college-friendly website. So go check them out, ponchooutdoors.com, promo code SEC for $10 off your first order. That's Poncho Outdoors /SEC for $10 off. And I forgot, free shipping. Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, Mike, that's a great deal. At first, when you said orange shirt, I thought you were going to send me one with Arch's name like embroidered on it or something. So,
that's coming. That's coming. They as soon as they get the burnt orange, we'll send you
right.
one, Stephen.
Yeah.
But speaking of great cousins, Stephen Up, he donated a membership as well. So let's do Alabama next, Stephen. Biggest question mark you have for the Crimson Tide as we go in year 2 under Caleb DeBoer?
So this is kind of a boring answer, almost along the same lines as Georgia, but I'm not going to take both sides of the ball. I just want to talk about the Alabama offensive line for a second, Mike, because I love the Caden Proctor, Parker Brailsford, Jaden Roberts trio. It's a trio that 2 of those guys are preseason All-Americans. The other one's getting an All-SEC buzz. But there's 2 spots that are open, left guard and right tackle. How fast does this group gel? And it's kind of the same thing as Georgia. You have a young quarterback, a first-time starter. He's got Florida State. He gets Wisconsin. They get Georgia early. So not necessarily worried about the Florida State and Wisconsin games, but, there are power conference opponents. So I think, how far does this offensive line gel with 2 new starters? But also, I think there's another level that this offensive line should be able to get to. There were maybe a little bit up and down last season. I want to see this group realize its potential, find its starting 5, settle in, because if they can settle in, take the pressure off Ty Simpson, this is a team that can win the national championship.
Hey, great news, Stephen. Poncho is based out of Austin, according to Morgan Hill. So we got you covered on the burnt orange Arch coming your way.
NIL deal for Arch. Let's get.
I had a feeling, Stephen, you'd go offensive line for Bama. So I went defensive line. And I think the defensive line will be very good. But, we got to look at recent champions. And that's what we're chasing at Alabama always, right? Championships. Even when Alabama was winning the championships, it was the defensive line was just instrumental in all of that. At Georgia, so maybe the best defensive lines ever assembled, at least recent history, and their back-to-back championship runs. And I know I'm not allowed to say this, but even the past, I won't even name them, but the past 2 national champions, they've had some good defensive linemen as well. So again, I'm not questioning whether they have a good defensive line with guys like LT Overton, Tim Keenan, James Smith, Quay Russaw, but I'm wondering, are we elite? Because that's what you got to be. You don't have to be it for 12 games necessarily, but we got to be that late in the season. We got to be that in the SEC championship, hopefully, if we make it, and the college football playoff. We have to have an elite defensive line, and that is, again, this is not like a huge question mark for me, but the standard is different. If you give this defensive line to probably 13 teams in this conference, they'd probably trade it for theirs. But is this a defensive line that's going to get you to the mountaintop? I'm not saying it's not, but I don't know that it is today. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair. I mean, they were 9th in SEC-only games last year against the run. We've talked about LT Overton this offseason, too, about converting some of those pressures into sacks. So it's almost kind of like the offensive line is like, you feel good about the foundation here, but what's the upside? What's the potential? Also, I would also kind of, I think LT Overton could be an All-American this year. Same thing for Tim Keenan. But also thinking about some of those Georgia teams, those Alabama teams, they had dudes that were playing at the next level, like a first team, dominate the line of scrimmage, and the SEC and the national championship will be about winning the line of scrimmage. So I'm wondering, can those guys crank up their game to another notch? But also, is there another performance level that this defensive front can get to?
And then who is maybe a specific player that you'll really have your eye on in fall camp for the Tide?
This is a boring answer. It's Ty Simpson. So I had to go here because I figured everybody's going to be talking about quarterbacks, and I'm glad we focused on line of scrimmage. But it does seem like he's got a lead here in the quarterback battle. Now we'll see if it holds up, but I think the question is, like, he's got the number one spot. Is he able to build on that? Do we get Keelan Russell kind of battling for that job too at some point? So how does he handle being QB1? I think that's my question here, because right now he's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But again, I didn't throw this at Steven this way, but I didn't do any quarterbacks because I thought, that's kind of a given. I'm going, how about this, Steven? I've heard nothing but great things about this guy, and I think he's got the potential to unlock what I think is a very, very good receiving core, potentially making it the best in the SEC. I'm going to be watching Miami transfer Isaiah Horton. I want to see how he translates to this new offense, new conference, new team, and everything, to team with of course Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. If Isaiah Horton is who they say he is, then I know Auburn gets all the buzz, and they deserve it when in terms of best receiving course. But I think Alabama could challenge them and potentially be even better if Isaiah Horton is worth the hype.
Yeah, I love that pick, Mike, because he gives you some size. I think he's like 6'4". He had a good game against Florida last year in the opener. Bernard is like 6'1". Williams is, I think, listed as 6 foot. I think it's like helping maybe with the small things. Like, I think about like downfield catches, fighting off a defensive back. I also think about getting into the end zone, converting those drives into touchdowns, having somebody who can go up and get it. So that trio, you're already set with those two. To add Horton, if he's as good as advertised, that's a pretty strong trio for Alabama.
Hey, shout out Cousin Rick. Steven, he's just gifted us $50. Rick's the most generous cousin out there.
It's Texas A&M's biggest fan, Cousin Rick. Dig 'em, Aggies.
Thank you, Rick. Bold take. And we'll get to, there's a couple other teams I want to hit on, but Rick being so generous, I thought I'd hit you with this, Steven. A&M's defensive line will be better than last year's, including a true freshman in the edge rotation, 5+ sacks. So, how bold is that in your mind, Steven, that A&M, I know they just sent a bunch of defensive linemen to the NFL, including high-round picks, but I also think it's fair to say some of those guys, maybe quite didn't live up to the billing last year. They were good, but I do not think they were elite. What's your thoughts on Cousin Rick's comment here?
Mike, I like the bold call there. I think what they were 9th in the SEC against the run last year, a little bit to be desired. Also, when it came to sacks, they only had 25. I mean, there was a lot of offseason optimism about how their sack total was going to be with Nick Scorton and those guys, but it didn't quite pan out. A lot of optimism for Marco Jones, too, at defensive end, the freshman coming off the edge. So maybe this not the high-end talent right now this group had last year, but maybe it's the collective. Maybe it's Mike Elko taking over more defensive responsibilities. I could totally see this, because I do think year 1 to year 2 growth is going to happen at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's where we need some more growth as well, Stephen, at a much exponential rate. Shout out Mr. Sip. He gave us $10. Thank you, Mr. Sip. Hail State. Stephen, break down the first 2 state games, if you don't mind. We got a counterfeit Marshall team and ASU minus old Scattaboo. So give a quick rundown, if you don't mind, for Mr. Sip about Mississippi State's first 2 games here.
Yeah, that first game against Southern Miss is going to be interesting, because they did bring over quite a few players from Marshall, including the starting quarterback, Braylon Braxton, some other guys on defense, offense. I mean, they're kind of scattered throughout. Not the entire team that won the Sun Belt last year, but still a pretty good foundation. Southern Miss was 1-11 last year. I think they're going to be a lot better. Now, in full disclosure, their head coach is Charles Huff, who's been around the SEC. He did kind of say anybody who was picking Southern Miss to win the Sun Belt probably spent too much time on Bourbon Street, because they had the Sun Belt media days at Bourbon in New Orleans. So I think that the hard part about a lot of these G5 teams is there's so many unknowns because of the personnel turnover. They have such a 50, 60, 70 new players, but I think given that you're taking a head coach and a lot of personnel from the roster that won the Sun Belt and importing them, they have a chance to get off to a fast start, a much faster start than it would say you're starting from scratch. So they have a quarterback who can beat you through the air with his legs. I think that makes Southern Miss dangerous, especially on the road. The second game is fascinating to me, Mike, because Mississippi State pushed Arizona State on the road last year in Tempe. Now you're getting them at your place where both teams are better than they were last season. I mean, Mississippi State's defense, this will be a big test for them to see how far they've come since the end of last season. Just the basics on Arizona State: great quarterback in Sam Levitt, All-American receiver in Jordan Tyson. They may have the best personnel in the Big 12 this year, but because of the crazy nature of the conference, they're probably going to regress a little bit in win total. So I actually think they're a much better, more well-rounded team this year without Cam Scatterbo, and think they are probably a top 15-ish type team.
So 2-0. Perfect. Book it.
Hopefully that breakdown was good enough for our friends down there at Mississippi State.
Yep. Hey, shout out to TriStar. He gave us a donation too. So let's do Tennessee next, Stephen. Biggest question, and there are some questions here. But hey, maybe let me ask you this real quick first. I don't know if you saw this. I engaged with it this morning, but apparently, geez, now I'm blanking on his name. Bill Connolly, the analytics guy for ESPN. He said this will be the worst offense of the Josh Heupel era. And some people I saw on Rocky Top were taking that as a bold comment. And again, I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm not saying Tennessee's going to be awful on offense, but to me, that's not that bold of a statement, given that 4 starting offensive linemen are being replaced. Obviously, quarterback, receiving core, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, running back. I mean, virtually everybody is due. Is that even a bold statement that and again, I'm not guaranteeing it, but that this could be the worst offense that Heupel's had at Tennessee?
I don't think that's bold at all, Mike. I think that's actually pretty accurate. I mean, given all the turnover from last season, new faces stepping in, the late quarterback change, it just feels like that was kind of I feel like that was kind of a given this year, don't you?
Yes, that's why I was confused why people were engaging with it and acting all crazy.
I guess maybe it's the off season is going on too long and we're all eager for kickoff, right?
Right. So, okay, I'm glad. I just wanted to get that out of the way. But so what is your biggest question? And again, there's many questions. This is not to say doom and gloom for Tennessee or anything, but what is your biggest question for fall camp for Tennessee?
So I'm going to switch my player to watch, Mike, to get away from quarterbacks. So I'm going to split the two positions. I'm going to focus on the offensive line for Tennessee. And I know you had some great interviews down at SEC Media Days and talking about the offensive line may not be as big of a concern for Tennessee. I could buy that because you do have some nice pieces here. Lance Hurd, I think, is bound to be better in year 2. David Sanders is supremely talented right tackle. You got some transfers to fill in. I think this Tennessee staff will find the right 5. But, it also goes to you have a first-time starter at quarterback in Joey Aguilar who is going to be willing to push the ball down the field. So how does this group come together? Kind of similar to Georgia and Alabama. Pretty favorable schedule, though, for Tennessee. Just getting this offensive line revved up, ready to go for that first game against Syracuse, giving Aguilar a chance to kind of showcase his arm and talent.
Yeah, I know. Well said, Stephen. So for me, again, there's many, many, many position groups, and they're talented, right? So this is not to say devoid of talent. According to a lot of metrics like the blue chip ratio, this is the most talented team Tennessee's had, but it could also be perhaps the most inexperienced. But that's why this year should be so fun for Tennessee, because it's hard to get a read on them. I think they could win some games that people aren't expecting them to, and just as easily you could say that they may drop a game or two that you don't anticipate they will drop. But since you went offensive line, the one that I have circled is the receivers for Tennessee, and that just kind of encapsulates exactly what I was just saying. Are they devoid of talent at receiver? Certainly not. But and this is my key player as well, so I would just give that away too. But I want to see Mike Matthews first and foremost, the 5-star. Thought about transferring out. Thank God he didn't, because Tennessee, they would really be hurting that receiver if Mike Matthews left. But you got him. You got Braylon Staley back for both those guys are second year. Chris Brazzell, the transfer from Tulane, made an impact last year. Didn't quite live up to the billing. But I always say, Stephen, it's year 2 generally that these transfers really make their impact. So we'll see what Chris Brazzell can do in year 2. Amari Jefferson, the transfer from Bama, and then true freshmen Travis Smith and Radarius Jackson, who made a ton of plays in the spring. So, again, they got a lot of talent, but who emerges? And can they play in the SEC against elite competition? These are all fair questions to ask. So I would love to know by the end of fall camp that Tennessee is confident in this receiver group, because they could very well make or break. Comments like Bill Connolly saying this could be the worst offense. It's not going to be if these receivers are big time and they live up to their billing in their opportunity to shine.
Maybe the thing with that Tennessee thing is, like, I think maybe there might be some Vols fans who think national media just believes the offense is just going to fall off a cliff this year. I don't think that's the case. Like, I think Heupel and the staff, they'll find ways to generate some offense. I had Mike Matthews as my player to watch as well, because I want to see him go from, recruiting hype, little bit of impact last year, to being like a go-to dude this year. So that way, when Aguilar is ready to stretch the field and they've got some of the other pieces figured out, he's ready to catch some of those downfield. And maybe the quarterback receivers for Tennessee are connecting on some of these big passes this year.
Mm-hmm. All right. We had... I want to give a shout out to who did it. Alex Wood, he gave us $5, and then Johnny Delgado just gave us $10, Stephen. Let's get to the main attraction. My damn Gamecocks. Love you guys. Keep up the great work. La Heisman, La Savior. Appreciate you, Johnny. Appreciate you, Alex. So let's do South Carolina, Stephen. Biggest question mark for the Gamecocks this fall camp.
Mike, I'm going to focus on the defensive line here. We know Dylan Stewart coming off the edge. There's no concern about one side. But what happens off the other side? Brian Thomas, you got some other guys that are going to have to step up. They've got to be able to step up and produce, but also step up and be able to take that pressure off of Dylan Stewart. Also, what happens on the interior? I mean, they lost so many guys who were contributors to this position last season. So not only that, it's the early season schedule. Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech, Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt, Bo Prabula at Missouri. Quarterbacks who can hurt you with their legs, and being able to win up front on early downs is going to be critical. So I think given that schedule, it's favorable, but there's some good matchups in there potentially for the quarterbacks if the defensive line isn't ready. So I want to know by the end of fall, does South Carolina feel good about its ends and tackles and just its overall depth up front going into the season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair, Stephen. And I had a feeling you would say that. So, it's just as a big question mark potentially is linebackers.
Yeah.
Where they don't have a Dylan Stewart, who may be the best defensive player. Hell, he may be the best player in the SEC. That's not necessarily a bold take, I don't think, given how he looked as a true freshman last year going into year 2. So where are we at linebacker? We've got guys like Fred Johnson, the Bama transfer, Justin Okaranko, I'm sure I butchered that, Jaron Willis, Sean Murphy. So, I mean, we got bodies there. And they took guys last year that I didn't even know who the heck they were really and turned them into big-time players. And my dog's pissed because we're talking Cox over here. But where are we at with the linebackers where if our defensive line is not dominating like they were last year, how do the linebackers perform then? So it's a little concerning, as it should be, that we're 2 positions in here, Stephen, and they're both essentially the front 7. That after the defense was so good last year, we got to replace virtually everybody on that front 7 aside from Dylan Stewart. That is the question, I think, with the Gamecocks this fall.
What's your confidence level in Clayton White? Because I think mine's probably pretty high to say that they maybe early in the season there's some bumps in the road, but maybe middle, late in the season they figure this out. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Clayton White, yeah, he's completely won me over.
Yeah.
I didn't know who the heck he was when he came over from Western Kentucky, but yeah, he has turned into one of, if not the best defensive minds, at least coordinator. I know Kirby and Venables, would argue that, but they're head coaches. But we're talking specifically defensive coordinators. He's up there with the elite of the elite in the conference.
I would agree with that. I think linebackers, I think they're a little bit easier to find. I typically I think you have to weigh the losses, but I kind of looking on paper. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about Fred Johnson stepping in this offseason. Not to mention you got some guys from the portal who have played at Alabama and also Florida State to transfer in. So they've got some talent and experience, but I think, to add to kind of compound that, like, let's just say the defensive tackles are a question. Your linebackers are a question. Your middle of your defense could be a real problem this year. So I think that's an interesting early season thing to watch, especially with the quarterbacks they're going to play. How far along are they in their development?
Mm-hmm. Hey, shout out Rover Sports. Steven just gave us $20. Love the show. Hardest working pod in sports. Mike, are you from Oklahoma? No. Did you grow up watching games with Shane in Tennessee? Sorta. I grew up all over. Dad was in the military. Shout out Dad, proud Navy vet. But I'll tell you, Shane hates watching games with me because we have seen more losses, I think, than we have seen wins. Tennessee, we were at the Ole Miss game, the infamous Lane Kiffin golf ball mustard throw game. We watched the South Carolina. Tennessee was destined for the playoff, right? Till they allowed 900 points to South Carolina. So I'm not sure Shane has watched a game since that moment with me. He refuses to watch games with me.
Did you guys watch the Tennessee win over Alabama together?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, see, yeah. I'm just like a coach, Steven. I move on from the wins. The right. Losses haunt me for life. But yeah, we did watch that one. So thank you for correcting me on that.
There's some good, some bad there, right? I mean, seeing Tennessee, sorry to all the Alabama fans, but I'm sure if you were a Tennessee fan, that was probably one of your many memories there that you can talk about in 5 years. I'm sure there'll be like 500,000 people who were at the game, right?
Yep. Well, speaking of House of Horror, shout out Liquid. I forget, he donated all those memberships. So let's do Florida, Stephen. Biggest question mark for the Gators. And quite honestly, it's got to be DJ now, but maybe aside from old DJ Lagway, what's the biggest question mark you got for Billy and company?
Mike, I want to see and hear and know that the defensive improvement in the last 4 games or so of last season is for real. And I want to see Florida be able to build off of that. And then within that, they have some pretty promising young players, like whether it's Cormani McClain, LJ McCray, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs. Like, they have a talented core of young players. I want to hear reports that those guys are developing. I want to hear the secondary with some of the turnover is playing at a high level against DJ Lagway and a good Florida receiving core. So I'm interested in just seeing, is the defense continuing to improve off of last season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great one, Stephen. I went similarly. I said depth on the defensive line because we had some guys move on, but we do got Sapp back. We got Caleb Banks back. So we've got some nice pieces and some unproven but very talented defenders that Billy Napier has brought to Gainesville. But how will those guys, again, same deal. Is Florida going to win a national championship? Certainly not. But similar to Alabama, I mean, that's the standard, right? So you're trying to get to the playoff. And with this murderer's row that we've talked about endlessly all off season, that's how you close the gap, is being dominant on the defensive line of scrimmage. And some of these games you lost last year, and even heck, some of the ones you won, some of the ones you're trying to win again, like LSU, where are they? Rebuilt on the offensive line. Georgia, we already talked about their offensive line, rebuilt. Tennessee, rebuilt. I believe Florida State, Stephen could correct me if I'm wrong, rebuilt on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. Ole Miss, rebuilt on the offensive. Texas, I mean, heck, we can go on and on. I can't say it about A&M, but the rest of them, Stephen, if Florida is going to spoil some teams' chances, it's going to have to be, in my opinion, as much as we focus on DJ and the offense and all this, that, and the other, It's got to be this defensive line setting the tone and becoming a great Gator defensive line. That's going to be your advantage to proving people like Cousin Shane wrong and being a force that Steven and I think you can be. Before DJ got injured, of course.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that schedule, Mike, I mean, when you start running down the list of quarterbacks, like you're going to play Nussmeier, you're going to play Carson Beck, Miami's offensive line should be pretty good this year. But how does Florida pull off an upset in some of these games? Like, you could talk yourself into DJ Lagway having a huge performance, but also, what if the defensive line just flat out dominates? Like, what if they get after Garrett Nussmeier? What if they get after Carson Beck, Arch Manning? Like, that is how, when you, as basic as complicated sometimes as football is, it's basically like just winning on the line of scrimmage. And if Florida can do that and affect some of these quarterbacks, that's a path to picking off an upset or two and getting into that playoff mix and navigating that difficult schedule. So I like where the trend line is going, but I need to see it over a full season, and it starts in fall practice.
And then is there a single Gator that you'll have your focus on this camp?
I was going to mention DJ. I had DJ Lagway until that news broke. So, yeah, not a good pick on my part. Maybe I jinxed.
I think that's. I mean, that is the answer, of course. But how about this one, Stephen? True freshman Dallas Wilson that we heard so much about exiting the spring. I think he potentially unlocks something different in this offense. Again, if he's a game breaker, and quite honestly, we don't need him to be, with the way Billy Napier runs his offense, ground and pound. You know, we want to win every game by 2 to 3 points. Don't blow anybody out, not even Long Island. But, can Dallas Wilson, can he be an impact guy? Again, he doesn't have to catch 100 passes. Can he catch 30 and have like 6 touchdowns? You know, even if he's got that type of impact and he's a deep threat, DJ Lagway, that's his best pass, if he's able to make it, that he's got in his back pocket. You know, again, I think Dallas Wilson is someone I'm going to be watching because of the rave reviews exiting spring, and if that happens again in fall, then I think we're really cooking here, Stephen, with an offense that is really, really going to hurt some people this fall.
I like Florida's receivers. I mean, a healthy Eugene Wilson, J. Michael Sturdivant from UCLA, I think is underrated, maybe a little bit underutilized at UCLA. You throw in Dallas Wilson, some of the other guys they got. This is a really solid receiving core for Florida. And we kind of joke about this, but isn't there a case to be made that Harrison Bailey is actually a player to watch this fall for Florida? I mean, getting him up to speed, getting him a lot of reps, you might need him.
You might need him to help pay the buyout if he's your starting quarterback. All right, shout out. We had I'm losing track of I appreciate all these cousins. But we had David Chambers gave us a donation. He's a big Ole Miss fan, Steven. So let's go the Rebs next. Biggest question that you have for Ole Miss entering fall camp.
How good is this offensive line? Because I think when I think back to last season, 3.7 yards per carry in SEC games. Pass protection was an issue. Jackson Dart was sacked 4 times against Kentucky. I need to see this offensive line solidify, because that also that gets into Austin Simmons and protecting your young quarterback, giving him an advantage in being able to push the ball downfield to these receivers. Looking at this group, you got Diego Pounds back, but you got some transfers and some other questions here. I think it is very difficult to microwave, to use a bad term, an offensive line from the portal. So how long does it take Ole Miss to find the right 5, especially when they were probably, fair to say, a little bit inconsistent? I don't know, underachieving might be the right word, up front last year.
I think that's totally fair, Stephen. Totally fair. And I just had a feeling you'd go offensive line. So I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to say defensive line. Come on, because they had such a great defensive line last year. And those guys did live up to the hype. They set the tone for the entire team, and if only Lane Whiffen didn't whiff, we would have done it, folks. We would have made the playoff, but that's neither here nor there. If we're going to get back there, Stephen, we've had to replace a lot on the defensive line. We bring in some transfers, like Princely's brother, Prince Will, who I'm not even going to try to butcher his last name. We got transfers like Deshaun Womack also in, who was, I believe, a 5-star when he was coming out and he signed with LSU. We've got some talented young players that have already been on campus that were elite high school prospects like Cam Franklin and Will Eccles, and Xavier Harris is back for another year. So we got the bodies, but how good are they? And are they near as good as last year? Because last year was special. And again, I don't think they will be, but they can't be a liability either. Because if they are, Ole Miss defense is going to take a big step back. And I don't think we can have that if we're trying to make the college football playoff for the first time under Lane Kiffin.
Feels like this group is talented, but also unproven. Like with Walter Nolan, there was a high degree of like certainty of what you were bringing in. So I think, how do they realize their potential a little bit? Because you mentioned Womack, you mentioned Prince Will, like these guys are really talented, like based upon recruiting. They haven't done it at their previous stops. So I'm wondering, like, to use that bad term, like microwave, like how fast can you microwave that good defensive front? But if I had to pick a player on defense, Mike, to watch, I got my eye on Jalen Braxton at corner because he had a pretty solid freshman season at Arkansas. He got hurt, transferred to Ole Miss. The Ole Miss secondary is one of those ones you start to look at the depth chart and you're kind of going like, how does this all fit together this year? And, they're going to play, some good quarterbacks in the SEC this season. They're going to play Tulane. That's going to have a good offense. So wondering how this all fits together in the secondary. And if Braxton could be your number one corner, that could go a long way to solidifying this group.
Oh, that's a good one, Stephen. I wish that's what I know you've done well when you make me wish I would have chosen him. But how about this? A little off the wall. And I know we got, we don't necessarily need a bell cow back in this offense. They've been highly, highly productive for as much credit, and he deserves all the credit for quarterbacks in the passing game. But Lane Kiffin is really built a rushing empire, so to speak, in Oxford. Where are we at running back, and specifically Logan Diggs, who last time he was healthy, if I recall, we had a Heisman Trophy quarterback, we had 2 first-round receivers, and we had a tight end that would go on to become a draft pick. So at LSU, of course, but they didn't really utilize Logan Diggs. But he's one that I keep hearing to keep your eye on. I know they added the Missouri transfer, Keywan Lacey, so he's another one. But I hope Logan Diggs finally 100%. I want to see what he is. And if he lives up to his potential, and if he is back to 100%, maybe he's a guy that we're not watching closely enough, Stephen, that could, again, Ole Miss has been a rushing machine. Maybe he's one of these breakout stars in the SEC that people maybe have kind of forgotten about.
I like that call because also I think he's like 215 pounds. So you don't have JJ Pegues. You got to find somebody to get the short yardage, be able to score in the red zone. Throw in Damian Taylor, the Troy transfer. I like their running backs at Ole Miss. I think you mentioned Lane Kiffin's track record. I always think about Florida Atlantic when they had Devin Singletary, and he went on to play in the NFL. So as much as the quarterback's going to get hyped for Ole Miss, and rightfully so, and Jackson Dart was great, but this also kind of starts being able to get a good ground game going. And they've got 3 talented backs, kind of which one emerges as the go-to guy, and can they get consistent production given what they have on the offensive line right now?
Yep. All right. Hey, shout out Cousin Jared. He gave us a donation. Stephen, he's a big LSU fan. So where are you at with the Tigers' biggest question mark entering fall camp for LSU?
I hate to be boring. So, Mike, you know where I'm telegraphing this one. Offensive line, 4 new starters. And there's even a sense of urgency because your season opener is at Clemson. Clemson, one of the best defensive lines in the country. So if this group is not ready, Garrett Nussmeier will be under pressure early and often, and LSU will lose another season opener. So I want to hear how this group is coming together. They've got some talent that's sort of recruited to the high school. They brought in Braylon Moore, the Virginia Tech transfer, Josh Thompson, the Northwestern transfer. They've got some nice pieces. How does this group fit together? And also, can this group get a better push in the run game? Because that could be something with an offensive line that's still finding its footing. Can you get some quality run blocking here? Get the ball to Caden Durham, Harlem Berry, take the pressure off of your offensive line and quarterback on the road at Clemson. So I've got my eye on offensive line for LSU this offseason.
Yeah, you're right. That is boring. So I'm going to go even more boring, Stephen, because I swear this will be the last year that I talk about this guy. unless he somehow comes back. I think he's out of eligibility after this year.
He'll sue for another one, right?
Yes. But what are we going to get out of Harold Perkins? Can we get him on the field? Can we put him in the right position? You already spoke about LSU taking a step defensively, so I would assume you would think that they have the answer. I thought they had the answer last year. I thought they had the answer the year before. They never had the answer. Can you put this guy on the field with Whit Weeks at the same time? They play, virtually the same position. That's part of the problem. He's a liability in coverage, but he is elite at getting to the pass, the passing game, or excuse me, the quarterback. So, Harold Perkins, what are we doing with him? We've got this piece that could unlock so much in this defense. Are we finally going to unlock his talent? Like I said, this is the last year I'm going to talk about this because I'm pretty sure he's been at LSU since 1998. But if we can, that to me, it potentially unlocks so much on this defense.
I think I watched a game on JP Sports with Harold Perkins chasing around some Mississippi State quarterback. I totally agree with you. Like, I think just wild card potential, how do you deploy him in your defense could change a lot for LSU. He's maybe one of the biggest wild cards in the SEC this year and figuring out a chess piece that's so valuable. On LSU, I actually went with DJ Pickett, like the 5-star freshman at corner. I know it's kind of boring, but they brought in Delaney, the corner from Virginia Tech, and if Pickett emerges on the other side, that is 2 new corners. You're talking about cleaning out the depth chart from last season and potentially 2 upgrades. And AJ Halsey, the Houston transfer, likely to start at safety as well. So I just think in terms of here's how LSU gets better. They're better against the run. Perkins is getting after the quarterback, and you've got better coverage on the back end. So Pickett's kind of one of those pieces that I'm counting on to make this defense better, and also Delaney, because I think that those two, they were 81st nationally in defensive pass success rate last year. I mean, getting back to the basics here for LSU is stopping the pass better.
Yeah. Well, how about this selection, Stephen, where LSU added a ton this offseason via the transfer portal, but I feel like the one guy that may have one of the highest ceilings that people are maybe looking beyond, and I think he fits a role that LSU does not have. I love Aaron Anderson. He's a great slot receiver, led the team in catching and receiving yards, if I'm not mistaken, from last year. I don't think enough people recognize that. People get enamored with Barry and Brown because he can return kicks and he drops passes, like nobody's business. But I think that the one guy that is being under-recognized that is Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. And maybe because he was banged up, and maybe because Oklahoma fans are not happy how that all worked out, but he's not there anymore. He's at LSU. And Garrett Nussmeier is going to need, a true outside elite receiver. If they're going to make the college football playoff, they need guys like that. They need Nick Anderson to be that guy. Oklahoma 2 years ago scored 10 touchdowns, freshman record at mighty Oklahoma. So if LSU's getting that Nick Anderson, and I hope they are, then LSU, I think, is going to be a lot better on offense than I think people anticipate.
Also, I like the call of Nick Anderson. I also really like Chris Hilton. I mean, he's been like Mr. Hall of Fame in bowl games the last couple years, 4 catches for 113 yards against Baylor. And he's been good at some other times in bowl games. He's got to stay healthy. But as far as giving that offense the deep threat, you throw in Nick Anderson, Aaron Anderson, Tre'Davious Green at tight end. There's a lot of weapons out there for LSU and Garrett Nussmeier.
Mm-hmm. All right. For Cousin Rick, Stephen, the great Cousin Rick, he gave us a donation. How about A&M? Biggest question mark you have for the Aggies?
It's actually kind of going where Cousin Rick was going. I'm interested in the defensive line this fall. I think covering Mike Elko now at Duke and Texas A&M, I don't think he's going to sugarcoat if this group is struggling in fall practice. I think he will be very honest with us. So I'm going to be kind of parsing through his comments to kind of figure out where they are. And you start to look at the personnel. They brought in some transfers, but Cassius Howell, the second year in the system, could he be better? Marco Jones, the true freshman. It feels like last year was all about Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner. Those guys made the all-SEC teams. Cassius Howell's been on some. He was on mine this preseason. I don't know if they'll have maybe that first or second team all SEC guy, but I think there's a chance that there's the collective overcomes the not having a superstar up front, if that makes sense.
No, exactly. And this is the first time, Stephen, that we agree. This is where I'm going to. Defensive line for A&M, I think it unlocks so much for them. And again, Billy Lucci and company, they're very, very, very high on this defensive line, including Dayon Hayes, I think is his name, the Colorado transfer that had like 6 sacks in the spring game that they had. So, can he emerge as that next great pass rusher? They've got a tremendous tradition of outstanding pass rushers down in College Station. They got talent. They're spending money down there too, particularly on the line of scrimmage down at Texas A&M. So it's not that I'm concerned that they don't have the right pieces, but I want to see them all working together in this Mike Elko system because I actually have confidence that they got the secondary figured out, but it won't really matter if you got the secondary figured out if you don't have a good defensive line.
Yeah, because people, like we saw this last year, they did struggle against the run last year. I think, ninth in the SEC. And you start studying their early season schedule. Notre Dame is going to try and run the ball on you. Auburn, one of the better offensive lines in the conference. And then you get Florida. We'll see what LSU is by middle of the season. So figuring this group out, especially that road contest against Notre Dame on September 13th, we'll figure out. That will give us a good idea of just how far this defense has progressed. But if you want to make the playoff, pull off an upset against Notre Dame, stop their run, force the young quarterback to win, there's some early pressure on this defensive front.
And then who is the Aggie that you're kind of most focused on too?
I mean, it's Marcel Reed, but since we probably should try to stay away from quarterbacks, I was going to go with Tyreek Chappell. Because there was a comment by Mike Elko this offseason that kind of said once he got hurt, they had to change some things on the back end. Well, he's back healthy this year. So I'm curious, like getting him back in. You've got Will Lee. You've got Des Ricks. Like there is some talent here. Julian Humphrey also transferring in. There's talent here. And Mike Elko was beyond frustrated at his secondary when they lost to USC in the bowl game. Curious to see how far they've progressed. And Chappell could be one of those solutions.
Yeah. How about this selection, Stephen? I like where you went there with Chappell, but I'm going to the other side of the ball. Terry Bussey, year 2. They switched him mid-camp from defense to offense, and I don't think he struggled by any means, but he didn't make a huge impact as an elite recruit. Year 2, I think he could, and he's one of these jigsaw pieces that could play receiver. I know he's primarily a receiver now, but receiver, running back, I think, and Colin Klein, his offensive scheme, I think it really utilizes these hybrid type guys to where maybe A&M's got a little bit more weapons than people realize, but that we need Casey Concepcion to be the guy that people like Steven's telling you he is. And I'm not questioning it, but he's got to be that. We need Terry Bussey to take a big step year 2 in college football. We need to give our quarterback as much help as possible. And I think Terry Bussey is a big piece of that puzzle.
I love that call, Mike, because when I think about just the basics of Texas A&M's offense last year, it felt at times they didn't have enough playmakers at receiver. And they only had 7 completions of 40-plus yards. That was tied at the bottom of the conference. And if you can hit on a few more big plays, you're talking about the offense kind of taking it to another level. It's hard to piece together consistently 10, 12 play drives. You've got to have like some drives that have a 1 play, 2, 3, some splash plays in the passing game. And I think about you're right about the hybrids. Like Concepcion can give you that. Bussey can give you that. Craver can give you big plays. So, and nothing else too, I think having a full devoted offseason for Bussey to focus on receiver helps him. And also he gives you that. He just caught a 5-yard pass. He makes somebody miss, and there's a 50-yard touchdown. That's what was missing from this offense last year, and that's why I love that call of Terry Bussey. Gives you some kind of playmaking ability on the outside.
Mm-hmm. All right, so for Mr. Sip, who gave us a donation, Steven, biggest question mark, there's probably a lot here, for Mississippi State.
Mike, I am going just a simple statement here. How much better is this defense? Because we just talked about the non-conference schedule. If you want to get to a bowl game, it starts by winning those 4 games in the non-conference slate. So it's going to require an upset against Arizona State. This defense, the stats, they're not safe for work. We shouldn't mention them on the show tonight. How much better is this group going to be? They brought in so many players from the portal, the year 2 of the system. Can you change some things up? Now you've got more pieces to work with. So that's pretty simple, Mike. I trust Lebby to figure out the offense. How much better is this defense?
Well, you trust Levy, as do I, as an offensive guy. We don't trust the defensive coordinator, Coleman Hustler. So how big of a step forward, and it better be a step forward, is that defense? Again, will we get that answer in fall camp? Probably not, but that's, anywhere, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, defending the run, wherever you want to put that focus. It needs to be on the whole dang defense because they were so awful last year. I'm putting it on Hustler to get that solved. And quite honestly, I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but I hope I'm wrong.
Their personnel is definitely better. I know I'll use a phrase that I know you hate. It can't be any worse than last year, right? It can't bottom out anymore. If it does, we better be talking about a new defensive coordinator by like October. So I just kind of think if you've brought in that much personnel, your depth is better. The bottom fell out last year. It's got to be at least a little bit better. A little bit better probably isn't good enough. It better be a lot to get to a bowl game, though.
And there's many, many different directions you could go here, but who's that Bulldog that you're focused on?
How about Anthony Evans, the receiver? They lost Kevin Coleman to Missouri as a transfer. Is Evans the go-to guy at receiver? This gets at Lebby's trust factor. I think he's going to find somebody or 2 or 3 to catch the ball. They've got a lot of transfers. Evans, 21 catches in 2 years at Georgia. I'm curious to see if he takes his game to the next level.
Hey, shout out Cousin Sven. State's got 4 playoff teams plus Ole Miss's home games from last year, playoff teams. So, and I think I saw a stat. I think Mississippi State, I don't recall who the other one is, but I think there's only 2 teams that are playing this year against 4 playoff teams like Mississippi State. That's wild, isn't it?
It is. And also I think they play Alcorn State. So if you just look at the other 11 games against FBS opponents, 10 of them played in bowl games last year.
Wow.
So, and the only one is Southern Miss, who's going to be a lot better this year. So.
Right, man. How about Fluff Bothwell? I'm fascinated to see what he looks like as he makes a jump from South Alabama. That's where I went with Mississippi State player to watch.
I love their running backs, don't you? I think they're really underrated. We'll see what the offensive line can do, but Bothwell was pretty exciting at South Alabama last year.
Mm-hmm. And shout out Cousin Garrett. He gave us $5, Stephen. Hot take. MIZ is one of the most underrated D-line rooms in the SEC this year. Are you buying it?
Buying. Ton of stock, Mike. I don't know how much I can buy, but I want to be like just buying all the Missouri underrated stock I can on defense, because if Darius Smith and Damon Wilson, and you throw in Isaiah Trotter, the transfer at linebacker, man, I love this front 7 on defense. So I think I actually may have included that in one of my articles recently, was I felt Missouri's defense was probably one of the more underrated groups in the country this year. So buy-in 100%.
Nice. So they've already kind of opened camp there in Columbia. Where is your biggest question for the Tigers?
I'll be boring. I'll fall on the sword for this one. It's quarterback for me, just because of the high-profile addition of Bo Prabula. I want to see, what is Missouri saying about how he is executing the passing game. I don't have any questions about his ability as a runner, but I want to see him be a complete quarterback. So you add in Sam Horn, Matt Zollers. If either one of those guys is pushing him, you could look at that as a good sign. You could also look at it as a bad sign. So I'm just fascinated to see his development.
Right. Yeah. I think you have to go quarterback. And I just kind of stated it kind of similar to last night. Which quarterback takes command of this offense? Because that's what the coaches need to see. And I would assume it would be Prabula, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's Sam Horn, who just got drafted. And he's in baseball, Major League Baseball, and he still said, heck, I'm sticking it through. He came here to play quarterback, and be the quarterback for Missouri. He could be long gone by now. And in today's day and age, we should highlight these guys that stay when it's much easier to head elsewhere. So shout out Sam Horn. I'm fascinated to see this battle, and whether it's Sam Horn, whether it's Prbula, it doesn't make any difference to me. But they got to make the right call here. So much hinges on it. This could be a playoff team, but we cannot struggle like we did last year on the offensive side of the football. Otherwise, it's going to be another disappointing season.
Yeah, and Mike, I think there's just a lot of intrigue for me because of the expectation level last season was so high, and they didn't have that statistical season that we thought. Brady Cook got banged up, which definitely impacted it. But now there's a chance for Drinkowitz and Kirby Moore to sort of reinvent this offense around a quarterback. Prbula's strengths are known. You got some new weapons at receiver. You got a new running back. Question marks in the offensive line. I think it's a pretty big year for Kirby Moore, too, to kind of get this offense a little higher up the stat sheet in scoring.
Mm-hmm. So who's that Tiger? Is it the quarterbacks, or is there a different one that you're kind of highlighting?
I got a little bit of a wild card, maybe. I got Johnny Williams, the left tackle, because when you start kind of breaking down Missouri's offensive line, it kind of seems like they feel good about four of the starters. Left tackle's the one that's a bit up in the air. Now, Caden Green, Connor Tollison, that's a really solid left side of the interior there. But how does Johnny Williams go from being a part-time player in the Big 12 to being a full-time player, starting left tackle in the SEC? That could hold a lot of keys to this season for Missouri.
Right, and it could hold the key to this guy having a big season. Stephen, I want to see if he carries it over. Ahmad Hardy, running back, the transfer, who I've already predicted will lead the SEC in rushing. I'm going to not feel great about that, though, if camp gets underway here and we hear, man, can this guy even play football? You know what I mean? So I'll be watching him closely. I think when Drink's offense, which I know it's Kirby Moore now, but Drink's, his entire Missouri program, it's kind of like run through the running back, despite all these, this all consternation and focus we give on quarterbacks and the great receivers they had. But it's been a running back machine down there. And it was even last year with plugging in some transfers and Cody Schrader, of course. And before that, Beatty. And before that, I always forget that dude's name, but he was awesome too. It's a running back down there at Mizzou, and Hardy could be that next guy.
Maybe this makes you feel better. Hardy last season ran for over 200 yards against Marshall. I mentioned Marshall losing most of its good players to Southern Miss, and he also had 60 against Auburn. Production can vary, and that's not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen, but I think he's a really solid player coming over. And also I think how I trust Drinkowitz and Kirby Moore to figure out ways to get him on running plays, to figure out the best way to kind of deploy his talent. That also gets at, when you look at their schedule, Mike, that game against South Carolina early in the season, we talked about South Carolina's defense. I mean, if this Missouri offensive line is rolling by then and Hardy's really clicking in this offense, South Carolina's defensive front with all those questions, that could be a real nightmare for South Carolina.
Hey, shout out Tyler Collins, Roundtree. Larry Roundtree is who I was thinking of. I mean, it's just been a running back factory down there, but we could talk about all the success Missouri's had another day. Let's go Oklahoma. Stephen, thanks I assume Rover Sports. He's an Oklahoma fan. He was asking if we were from out there. But what's your biggest question mark for the Sooners?
Mike, it has to be the offensive line, right? I mean, this is a group that just, there's so much of a high expectation about Bill Bedenbaugh. He's one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. Transitioning to the SEC was tough with personnel turnover and injuries. They've got a lot of new faces, whether it's transfers or freshmen, a reset as far as health. It feels like Oklahoma can get a better starting five this year than they had last year. So whether it's Michael Fasusi, the 5-star, whether it's the Derek Simmons, the transfer from Western Carolina, I want to see new faces stepping up, and I want to see Oklahoma feel good about a 5 exiting fall practice.
Yeah, that's exactly where I went, and the only time the offensive looked good. Troy Everett was in there. We'll see how healthy he is. But maybe, just maybe, they started to figure some things out. That Alabama game was huge, obviously. LSU, they just didn't get completely overwhelmed like they had been previously in the season. So, yeah, I think it's all about the offensive line. And I don't care if you say his name right, Stephen. I'm still calling him Bill Beambo until he manufactures a successful offensive line in this conference. He's got to earn the right to be called the right name, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. Last year, anytime you mentioned offensive line, what would happen? Bill Bedenbaugh's name, just dropped in the comments like that. So he's got to earn it this year. He's got to earn that high paycheck this year.
Yeah. So who's the player to watch for the Sooners for you? And there's many different options here.
I'm going to go let's go with Gentry Williams at corner, because Eli Bowen, I feel good about as kind of one starter. What happens at the other spot for Oklahoma? Not a ton of questions, I think, on this defense. Yeah, they're losing Stutzman. I trust Brent Venables to figure it out. I do think corner is one of those spots where it shows up consistently in some of your preseason research that's a spot to watch for Oklahoma.
Hey, how about this? A name, Stephen? Kendall Dobie, who got banged up last year. I was there, Tennessee game. And, the defense didn't fall apart by any means, but replacing a lot on not a lot. Well, yeah, they are replacing a lot on defense. We need some leadership to emerge. We're going to need some star players. And, based on what all the folks in Norman told me, Kendall Dobie was one of their better players. So what's he look like coming back from injury? And can he regain form to be one of the more promising defenders that the Sooners have? That's kind of what I want to see this fall.
Yeah, it's a good call. Like his versatility, I think, could be a big asset in this offense. Like, how was he deployed, especially after such a significant injury? Like, what level, how quickly is he going to get healthy? And especially when you play Michigan in week 2, where they're bringing pretty good offensive line, pretty good run game coming in there. So, yeah, I think that's a good call, Mike. I'm curious to see how they use him and kind of at what percentage his health is this year.
Yep. All right. Hey, I think we're all out of the donations. So let's go alphabetical the rest of the way here, Stephen. How about Arkansas? Biggest question mark for them Razorbacks.
How does the defense come together? I think we know Taylon Green and Bobby Petrino. They're going to cook up some offense, but there's only 3 starters back on defense. There's concerns last year in the secondary. I've got concerns this year about the defensive front. They were 10th in the SEC in SEC only games against the run, only 17 sacks in SEC play. They've got to figure this group out. Now, maybe they get a little bit creative with some different looks, but man, defensive line could be a real concern. And the secondary with this schedule, I want to see Arkansas take a step forward on defense this fall.
How about receivers? That's the big one for me, Stephen. They're dead last in returning production in the conference at the receiver position, but they went crazy here in the portal. Omega Blake and Cam Shanks and all these guys, and unfortunately, Ismail Cisse. There you go. Well, he's unfortunately done for the season apparently due to injury. So a guy potentially a starter done for the year for a team that is just already decimated in terms of returning production. And we're very high on this show. Taylon Green, we think he's fantastic, but does it matter if he doesn't have anyone to throw the ball to? And I'm sure they'll manufacture some offense here, no doubt. But I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, we went from a bunch of tall receivers to a bunch of tiny ones here. And again, what does that matter? Not necessarily, but I want to see how that impacts Taylon Green, who now that I sit here and say that out loud, he was high on a lot of his throws, but I think purposely, because he knew his guys could go up there and get it. So now it's a little bit of a challenge, a different challenge for old Taylon Green this year. But to me, it's all about the receivers. We need not just 1 or 2. We probably need 3 or 4 to emerge this fall camp.
Would the Liberty Bowl give you any confidence there because they had a lot of new faces step up, and also they were shorthanded, and Taylor Green found a way to make it work?
Yeah, because I mean he's just a massive, massive talent. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is a fair point, and one that would give me optimism if I'm a Razorback. Again, I think Taylor Green can make these receivers look good. I don't think that you can have a bunch of elite receivers and necessarily make an average to poor quarterback look good. But the reverse, I do think is true.
Yeah, and this gets at my player to watch. Omega Blake, who was a big play threat at Charlotte last year, and Raylan Sharp, who also transfers in. Two guys who are going to be counted on day one to play well. And Sharp is likely going to play the slot. You'll see Blake on the outside. So they've been there since the spring. They probably should have a good rapport, but what's the upside here? You go from playing G5 to playing in the SEC. It's a pretty big step up. So I've got my eye on those two receivers, but I'm also in the back of my mind, I'm thinking Petrino, Taylor Green, they've kind of done it before. I think they'll be okay at receiver.
Yeah. What about running back? I got my eye on Braylon Russell. Year 2 impact. He started to come on late last year, but we lost JaQuinton Jackson, who was, he may have been the most under-heralded, if you want to say, running back in the conference last year. I mean, there for a while, he looked to be on all SEC pace before, he kind of got injured, but he was just so massive for the Razorbacks. And Braylon Russell, a much different player. I know they added help via the portal as well, but is he ready to be that guy for the Razorbacks? I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, it is. I think he's going to be fun to watch too. Isn't he like 250 pounds, kind of barreling through some of these SEC defenses? Mike Washington also, like you mentioned, transferred in. I hate to just say they're going to be fine, Mike, but it does feel like they've done enough in the portal at running back to give some depth, and at receiver, at least they have options there. And if you think Petrino and Green can cook up a good offense, my concern level about the skill talent's a little bit on the lower side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, speaking of concern, how about Auburn? What's your biggest concern for Hugh and company as they enter year 3?
Mike, I don't think this one will surprise you, but I am fascinated to see how the Jackson Arnold experiment works this year, because there's been some talk coming out of SEC media days about trying to build up Jackson Arnold's confidence, what happens in practice. We'll see. And I think there's really, looking back at what happened at Oklahoma last year, the offensive line injuries, the receiver injuries, there's really no excuse at Auburn now, given what they have and what they've been able to add through the portal. They've got one of the better offensive lines in the conference. They've got one of the better receiving cores in the country. So the supporting cast is there. I think Arnold's a pretty good fit for this offense. How does it all come together, I think, is a real big question.
What about the running game? That's kind of where I'm leaning, Stephen, because of the focus on the receivers, because of the focus on Jackson Arnold. And we lost our tank, Jarquez Hunter, to the NFL. I know they bring back Austin, and he's a fine player. But I think, it also could be fair. Maybe this is a poor selection by me. But it is fair to say that Hugh, I think, has manufactured quite a bit of offense without necessarily elite running backs in his past. But we may look back and say, man, Jarquez Hunter, we didn't realize what we had. You know what I mean? Like he kind of carried us late last season to some of the wins that we had. So I think that is not a huge concern, but I think it is a concern for this offense.
I had Damari Alston as my player to watch for that reason. Is it by committee? Does someone emerge as the number one running back? I think is a real question. It's hard sometimes. I would be curious to know if you feel the same way. When you're weighing skill talent, like running backs are often the easiest to replace, but there also is some sort of value that some of the real high-end ones bring. Now, Jarquez Hunter wasn't a first-round pick, but what is the gap between Hunter and the guys they have this year? I think could be a real question. Darrell Robinson, also the transfer they're bringing in, I think could be a nice player too. So they have some depth, but is somebody good enough to own that number one running back spot, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, how about this? Now I just don't know anything about this guy really, but I've heard he's fantastic. Left tackle, Xavier Chaplin, transfer from I believe Virginia Tech. But I watched Virginia Tech, Stephen. I just watched him lose to Vanderbilt, but I've watched that. So again, I'm not saying he's not a good player, but if he's not ready for the challenge, you will throw him under the bus, and then all of a sudden our offensive line, maybe it isn't a strength. If you don't have a left tackle, you can say all the nice things you want about Jackson Arnold, but we also know if he's running for his life, and not just him, all quarterbacks really, but we've seen him running for his life, and he makes some questionable kind way to say it decisions. Again, I'm sure he'll be fine, but if he's not, that's going to be a major, major concern for me.
I think that's a fair concern. I mean, this gets at kind of our discussion on transfers about overrating year one. And I do wonder, like going from ACC to SEC, the challenge is going to be a step up. You've got the opener against Baylor. Also, I think the most appealing thing about him is that he is a guy who has started at a power conference school for multiple years, and he's coming like day one ready, and he's thinking about the NFL draft. So he's got a lot of incentive to have a good year. So I know he is on the radar for some NFL scouts. And so I think that I don't want to say seamless, but I think there's a lot of interesting upside. The question is like, how fast is he able to kind of acclimate to Auburn in this offense? And I think there should be some confidence.
Mm-hmm. Well, where they don't, maybe you can give them some, Stephen. Kentucky, where's that confidence? Where's the biggest question mark for the Wildcats?
I almost wanted to say, how long does it take the coaching staff to get everybody's name figured out, because there's so many new faces here? And in the big picture, it's like where do you go with this one? There's so many new faces. So I kind of settled on the defense. I sort of trust Brad White and Stoops to get this figured out, but I want to see Kentucky get back to playing big blue wall football, be able to get the ground game going, control the line of scrimmage, maybe the time of possession, ease Zach Calzada into things. So offensive line, 3 transfers likely to start, including maybe both tackles. How does this group come together? I think is going to be the key for Kentucky this fall.
How about this? This may not be fair, Stephen, but I went like program wide. Could be offense, could be defense, could be coaching staff, could be players. What's the identity of this program? I used to know what it was. It was toughness. It was running the football. It was playing good defense. Now we have country club mentality. We keep bringing in these transfer quarterbacks. We're making the quarterbacks the center of our team. We got prima donna receivers. We've got offensive line all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but it happened quickly, and it happened a while ago where the offensive line wasn't a strength anymore. What in the world is the identity of Kentucky football? And I hope for their fans' sake we find that, because that's been missing for several years, pretty much since Mark Stoops accepted the Texas A&M job.
You heard he is motivated this offseason, right? So
I hope he is motivated, Stephen, and I hope they find an identity, and it's going to start with the player I'm watching, Stephen. Josh Braun, the transfer, is his 3rd SEC school, if memory serves. This is kind of hilarious, but that's kind of the state of college football. Josh Braun, can he bring some toughness, some physicality? He was a good player at Arkansas. Why he's at Kentucky now, I'll never know. But can he anchor the offensive line, get back to that big blue wall? It all starts up front for me.
I like your description of like the program wide thing, because I do wonder like where this program is, like getting back to basics, finding your identity, doing the things that made you a consistent bowl team in the conference. And some of that is like the offensive line. Like they brought in the Pete, the transfer from New Mexico State, the Bowling Green transfer. You mentioned Braun. These guys got to hit right away. And, they're going to play Toledo in week 1. They get Ole Miss early in the season. So all of that is a fascinating experiment for Kentucky. I went to the other side of the ball, Mike, for my player. Myquise Humphrey Grace, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, transfer from South Dakota. He was an FCS All-American on the defensive line. 18.5 tackles for a loss last season. It was FCS ball. But how does that translate? Because they're going to need some dudes on the defensive front too to hit this year for this defense to get back to the top of the conference.
Man, what a deep cut. South Dakota transfers. That's the CFB encyclopedia. Stephen Lassan there for you. Hopefully this next team's not hoping on any South Dakota people. Texas, mighty Texas, Stephen. I know, no questions. Arch already won the Heisman, according to Stephen. He's got his name tattooed all over his back, I believe. What is the smallest, minutest question you have for them Longhorns, Stephen?
Mike, you've asked me why I wear long sleeves all the time, right? That's got Arch and Manning on both.
You gotta hide that. I get it.
Yeah. Just kidding. I think, speaking of Arch, is the offense firing on all cylinders, because they open against Ohio State. 4 new starters on the offensive line, some new faces too at receiver. Emmett Mosley from Stanford, Jack Andres, the tight end transfer from Cal. How healthy is CJ Baxter at running back? Because he's another weapon too. So it's Arch's first year. There's a ton of hype for this group. How does it all fit together with that big time season opener coming up against Ohio State? So I want to hear if it's firing on all cylinders.
Did you take it personally that this was not like unanimous by any means, but there were several people, Stephen, that told us at SEC Media Days that predicted Texas to lose 3 games, and there were several people that said Arch would not live up to the hype. Does that concern you? Does that offend you? You need these people's names so you can hunt them down? What's your thoughts on that?
I'm a little concerned. Did they all come from Oklahoma, by the way?
Not all of them,
College Station. Yeah.
Some of them College Station.
Yeah. I will say, I am a little bit concerned about the hype level, and when I predicted Arch first in the SEC quarterback rankings, way back in February or March, I didn't do it to be I don't know the other right word for it, a carnival barker or whatever, to stir up attention.
Trendsetter.
There we go. An influencer, perhaps. I've always wanted to be. I just think this is kind of why I'm wondering if the offense is firing on all cylinders, is because I trust Sark. And I think given the new pieces, it may take some time, and maybe it doesn't get to that top quarterback perch. But I also look at it and go, Nussmeier's got a new offensive line. South Carolina's got some questions. How does Mateer? We know Lagway's hurt. And so it's maybe he doesn't win the Heisman, but he might be the best quarterback in the country. And also, Cade Klubnik is probably the best quarterback in the ACC. But I know there is a very large percentage of people that will probably flip out when you say Drew Aller's probably the best returning quarterback from Penn State in the Big Ten. There's a lot of questions at quarterback in college football this year, and that's kind of why I think whoever finishes first team All-SEC is probably going to end up being the first team All-America quarterback this year.
Yeah, no, you make a great point. Do I make a point, though, Stephen, saying my biggest question mark for Texas is the offensive line, and then they got massive talent there, but they lost some great players to the NFL, opening at Ohio State, opening conference play at Florida, which I think that's personally the most hostile environment in the conference right now, at Georgia, Oklahoma, away from Austin. These are teams that'll get after your quarterback. That certainly I think they'll have it solved probably by midseason, but given some of these early road tests, that's a big reason why I've got offensive line, which is in transition, talented, but in transition. That's kind of my big concern.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's totally fair. We saw Trevor Gooseby play well last year at left tackle. He's got to do that over a full season. And you're also mixing and matching some experience and some other pieces in there too. So they are very talented. I think the question is how do they get this revved up? You go to Ohio State, you mentioned Florida and Oklahoma. Those 2 defensive fronts are going to be good. And so if this group is not quite up to par middle of the season, 9-3 seems crazy. At Ohio State, at Florida, Oklahoma, it's not out of the question, I would say.
Now, is it good news if I say the player to watch, Stephen, for me, kicker Mason Shipley, because we had kicker issues last year, but also because, there's not a lot of question marks with Texas. You don't want your kicker to be a question mark, and I'm not saying he is because he was excellent in his previous stop, but we got to see that translate here with the pressure. I mean, kickers are weirdos. Everybody knows that. There have been kickers that are the best in the world, and then they, like Pat McAfee, shout out Pat McAfee, missed the critical kick to go to the national championship. You know what I mean? So kickers are a different breed. Can he handle that pressure? No, just being on the same field as Arch Manning, I don't know.
Man, that's a tall ask. I mean, aren't you intimidated if you're a kicker and you got to work in the shadow of Arch Manning? Man, I got to say,
is Arch the holder? I mean, because if he is, the kick's through. It's gonna work.
Oh, you didn't hear? He's going to kick, punt. He's going to play quarterback. He's going to call plays too.
He can do it all.
Man, I have to say, I'm going to miss this. Like in the season, we've been having a lot of fun with this. I'm really going to have I'm going to miss this during the season. In all seriousness, Mason Shipley's a really good kicker. I think he hit a 60-yarder when they played Sam Houston when he was at Texas State. I know this is like really nerdy stuff. He was good at Texas State. So good pickup for Texas because Bert Auburn had some inconsistencies there. But no, that's probably a good sign for Texas when special teams is probably higher up on the list of concerns.
Yeah. And then who did you have as your Longhorn?
Mike, I have the combination of like 5 transfer defensive tackles on here. So I just grouped them all together because I figured first game of the year, Ohio State with a veteran offensive line is going to say, just how good are you guys? Like, are you ready from game 1 to go? I think that this defensive front and defensive tackles, there's a lot of depth. They did a good job through the portal. Curious to see if they're kind of almost like the offense firing on all cylinders for that first game.
All right. Last but not least, just going in alphabetical here. Vanderbilt, biggest question mark for the Commodores.
Mike, it has to be the offensive line. I feel like I'm Mr. Offensive Line tonight, but 4 new starters for Vanderbilt. They're moving Chase Mitchell around to try to find the right 5. He's the only returning starter from last season. But I think about how Vanderbilt wants to play. They want to play a kind of ball control, time of possession. They want to run the ball. They want to be able to use Pavia on the ground. The only way you can play that style is if your offensive line is performing up to kind of at a high level, like we saw in some of those games last year. So how does this offensive line reload with new faces and also a very difficult schedule?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Stephen. I went offensive line for the Commodores as well. But again, that's not a big question mark for me, given the offense that they run. And heck, they may have even upgraded talent-wise, adding some of the pieces they did in the portal. But it's still, it's still a totally reworked offensive line. And like you were saying, we got to protect Pavia. He's our golden goose, so to speak. So it is offensive line for me. Player to watch. Didn't do anything at Mississippi State, but he was a game breaker at New Mexico State. Transfer, Trent Hudson. We need some more weapons to emerge. Someone that already knows the systems, already played with Diego's, already played with 4 of these coaches. We don't need him to be all SEC or something, but we need a little bit more in the passing game to make this Vanderbilt offense a little bit more potent. Give me a player to watch, Trent Hudson.
We are thinking along the same lines. I actually went with Martrell Height just because it's going to be fascinating to see the experiment of playing him at receiver this year. But I think just in a big picture sense, Vanderbilt was at the bottom of the SEC in big passing plays. Because of their style, they don't need to hit 30 a year. But I think when you think about how to put drives together, it is hard to consistently put those 12 to 15 play drives together. Well, if you're Vanderbilt and you score a couple big plays here and there, maybe it's Height, maybe it's Hudson, maybe it's Trey Richardson, the transfer they brought in late in the spring too, trying to upgrade speed, big playability. I think all of those guys could factor into it.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, we're approaching an hour and 45 minutes. Where else are you getting at on a Monday night? Break it down every single fall camp across the SEC. We still got media days interviews. I'm on my last leg here trying to get all these out. Fantastic interviews. Really appreciate everybody that stopped by the booth. So we're working hard to get those out. Those are going to drip out throughout the week. We'll have those all up before the weekend, hopefully. But anything on your end, Stephen, before we hop off?
Mike, I am just excited to see some players on the field this week with fall practice starting up. Can't wait to get this season underway. The Athlon Sports Magazine is on newsstands right now. You can also order it from athlonsports.com. So if you want to get a little bit more studying in before the season kicks off, it'd be appreciated if you went to the newsstand or Athlon Sports and pick one up.
And I even saw, Stephen, I meant to tell you this. I believe I was at Kroger in the old checkout aisle line. So for the first time I saw Athlon. I know they were in Publix, but at Kroger at the checkout line, they got some Athlon Sports. So they know those things are moving, baby. We appreciate all the purchases of the Athlon Sports College Football Magazine. We appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. We'll be back, Cousin Shane and I, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. For Stephen and I, we appreciate you. We're running out of words. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.